let's get started. A very warm welcome from my side, and I have the pleasure to introduce to you our hosts today for our MVNO Academy, where we talk about how you can integrate eSIMs into your service offering. So it's my pleasure to welcome Rune Holbech from our partner, Nordic eSIM, and my colleague, Sergii Kirik, who is our integration engineer at PortaOne. And the three of us will be talking you through and hopefully showing you that it's not as complex as you might think to deploy eSIMs into your service offerings. So let's take a look at our agenda so we can be so we know what's about to happen here. So first, we'll have an overview of a concept of the eSIM ecosystem. How is it different? How are eSIMs different from physical SIMs? Maybe what are some important pieces of the puzzles that you should be familiar with? And then afterwards, we will also have a demo where we show you or illustrate two important customer journeys or flows. And we hope that you get the sense that deploying eSIMs isn't as complicated or difficult as you might think. I'm also mindful that we have, I think, a very good mix of an audience, meaning some of you might already use eSIM in production, whereas some of you have heard of eSIMs but aren't quite sure about what eSIM is all about and how complicated or difficult it is. So we will try to cover all of these aspects, and hopefully every single one of you might learn something today. So that's our goal here. Before we jump in, I wanted to have a quick raise of hands or quick poll. So I'm going to launch the Zoom poll here. And if you don't mind to help us answer some of these questions that we have. So the first question is, what has prevented you from deploying eSIM-based products and service to your customers? Do you feel it's too complex, or you're just not sure where to start? Is it too costly to you? Maybe in your market segment, you don't see specific client demand. Do you work with an operator? Maybe they're not quite offering eSIM yet themselves, or is it maybe something else? So if you could take a minute to answer these questions, that would be fantastic. And I'll also share the results here. It seems to be that the majority does feel you're not quite sure where to start and it's too complex. So we do hope that this webinar might actually help you in your journey then in that case. There was a few answers with something else. MNO doesn't support it, no client demand, only 8%, and too costly, no one answered that. So that's good to see. So thank you very much. I do have one more that I would like to ask you about. So I'm going to end this one here. I'm going to share the results. So you're welcome to see them for yourself. Oh, I see the second poll was already launched too. So the second was, where are you in your eSIM journey? So thank you for answering both questions. I didn't realize that both questions would be launched at the same time. Great to see that there's a lot of you responded just starting to learn what it's all about. And I do feel this webinar should be a good piece of the puzzle here and help you in your journey. So that's our goal from the three of us, that you come away today with maybe saying, you know what, I've learned something and I know the next step now to maybe research further to deploy eSIM. So thank you so much for participating. All right, then we're going to continue with our webinar, and I'm going to ask, it's my pleasure to pass the microphone over to our partner, Rune, who is CEO of our partner, Nordic eSIM. And Rune will talk to you about the eSIM ecosystem and what's important to know.
Thank you very much. So I'm happy to be joining here to present eSIM and give some introduction to what is the what is the eSIM technology. It's going to be just a very brief introduction here, but also happy to take any questions that you might have. But the aim here is, as Klaus also mentioned, to explain to you how it's not necessarily so different from a SIM card, at least from a deployment point of view. Of course, it's very different since the SIM card is the physical piece and the eSIM is distributed digitally, but it is from many perspectives in the journey the same whether you're looking at a SIM and an eSIM. So both from what Sergii is also going to show later, I think we can hopefully show you that the journey is to get to where you have launched eSIM is not that difficult. So basically everything in an eSIM originates from the SIM card. The file structure, the way it authenticates towards the network, etc., is all the same as you know from a standard SIM card. It also means that when we are building the eSIM profile template, we will be asking the same questions as we would for a SIM card. We will very often we work with a SIM card specification, and we then transform that into an eSIM profile specification and into an eSIM profile template. So by moving into eSIM, you're moving away from the physical card and you're moving into where you have now the digital eSIM, and therefore are able to build a full digital journey, a full digital onboarding for your subscribers. There might be other requirements in order to make that happen. KYC, of course, is one of them, and that happens before the eSIM platform. So from that perspective, that is not part of the core eSIM profile download, but it is of course something that needs to be taken into account when you want to do a fully digitalized journey. So besides from the obvious difference of being physical, not physical as the SIM card, of course, the fact that you now have something that is digital opens up for some flexibility. It can improve in terms of distribution. It's in many cases that it will be easier to digitally distribute your eSIM profiles also in terms of your point of sales and so on. So there will be some advantages from there. So as I was touching upon, this whole onboarding and remote management is really where eSIM is moving or differentiating from the standard SIM card. If you are looking at travelers that today might have 5-10 SIM cards that they travel along with them, they take along with them on their journey, now they will have the opportunity to load those profiles as eSIM, and then they are already in the phone, and when they arrive in the respective countries, they are able to turn on that profile and thereby easily connect to the network. So that it changes the dynamics, and especially for the users here, they don't have to deal with the physical SIM. They don't have to buy them. They don't have to keep them. They don't have to install them. And in many scenarios where it's something you do often, here eSIM will be a big advantage for the user. It of course also impacts the telecom industry in general. The device manufacturers are saving space in the devices, which they can use for something else, maybe more battery time. The MVNOs and MNOs are, I mentioned the distribution cost before, but those, let's say, more dynamic models and easier usage for the subscribers, I think will be something that is also very interesting for the MVNO segment, that they might be benefiting a lot from this more dynamic switching that is there today with eSIM. So now we come a little bit more into the actual journey and to the Nordic eSIM part, where, as you see, what we have tried to do is build something where we take care of everything around eSIM. Most of our customers don't necessarily have a heavy technical team that has a lot of knowledge about eSIM, so they require us to support them in many of the areas. And so we found that in order to improve the journey and to make sure that it's not complicated, we have made a very sort of straightforward onboarding procedure. We just went through the onboarding together with the PortaOne to make sure that we had a full-blown test of how it all worked, and it's now fully integrated. So we focus on taking every step in a way where it's easy to understand for the customer. We have the technical power to build the eSIM profiles, as I touched upon in the beginning. So for this journey, we are well prepared, and especially for MVNOs, I think we have a very lean setup that really supports the dynamic of an MVNO. This step-by-step onboarding procedure basically also supports the, let's say, start small and then scale your business. So from a perspective where you might not have, in the first questionnaire, it was mentioned that there were not many devices available in some markets. But here, I think it's a good idea to launch eSIM, to get some learnings. You have small volumes, but you build the whole process, and it allows you to then when volumes are picking up in terms of more handsets being available, but then you are ready to grow quickly. That's certainly supported by the systems that we are presenting here today, and you will then have all your onboarding procedures and the digital journeys aligned because you started early. So I can only recommend that. Of course, I'm also in the selling eSIM platforms business, so it's maybe an obvious thing for me to say, but I think many of our customers that have started early have really benefited from that in their market. We certainly are ready to provide the support for that, and we hope to see many of you as customers later on. Thank you very much, Sergei. If I can hand over to you, and you will show a little bit more about the integration, etc.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sergii. I'm an integration engineer at PortaOne. And today, for this webinar, I prepared two flows just to visualize what we were talking about, to show you how platforms can be integrated and how smooth experience of end users could be. Two flows for today. The first one is onboarding flow. Let me explain what it is, and later on we'll go to live systems and execute this flow. Right, so we have new subscribers, and they are, let's say, they seeking for eSIM subscription. The goal of our marketing team of our MVNO or MNO, whoever implements eSIM solution and wants to provide it to those end users. In my flow, I suggest that this marketing team lends those new subscribers into sign-up portal. And in this sign-up portal, the new subscribers are suggested to choose a product they want to subscribe to. I mean, a plan, a bundle offerings, and etc. They provide their details, like email, where they want to receive eSIM profile, activation details, And as long as they interact with this sign-up portal actually is talking towards PortaBilling platform, which is billing and support system. And eventually the subscriber is created in PortaBilling. Once they sign up, there is a new customer in PortaBilling as created. And the order details are also captured and stored in PortaBilling. And that triggers a workflow in PortaOne workflows. Specifically, so basically we want to find available number, we want to find available eSIM, we want to assign all those credentials with the plan and create service account for end users in PortaBilling BSS, right? And one of the steps would be talking towards Nordic eSIM platform because we want to prepare our eSIM profile for download. And once we did that, PortaOne workflows would generate a QR code. Really easy way for end users to activate their and download their eSIM profile. Eventually, we deliver this QR code towards our subscribers. In my implementation, I'm doing this through SendGrid and deliver this QR code through email. The second flow is about profile installation. And when we received our activation details, it's time to go and enable eSIM profile in our smartphone. So our new subscribers, they take their smartphone, mobile device, and they go find the QR code in the email and scan it. And once they scan, the mobile device goes to Nordic eSIM platform to download profile and install eSIM into the device. So these two flows I want to show you today. And if you allow me, I'm going to just share my screen.
And also, while Sergei is doing that and preparing it, I know we got a couple questions in the chat. That's perfectly fine. Just to give you all a heads up, we will have time for questions and answers at the end. So please feel free. Zoom also has what's called the Q&A option. So as opposed to the chat, which sometimes it's challenging to keep track of all the questions, if you don't mind trying to find the Q&A option in Zoom and ask your question there, and then we can answer those questions at the end of the session. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I think you should see a Nordic eSIM platform right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what systems I have here in slides, you could see Nordic eSIM. This is where we manage our profiles. So for example, I can go here to profile inventory and see available SIM cards prepared for this demo. We have PortaBilling and operational support systems. This is where we manage our customer and doing revenue assurance operations, billing, right? And here we also have the SIM cards inventory synchronized with Nordic. Let me just quickly show you our eSIM cards. They are all available here, just like in Nordic. We also have, in my slides, we also had a sign-up portal. This one is demo, that's why it's hosted on my local host. And eventually we have my email, it's my personal email, Sergii Kirik at Ucornet. This is where I manage my bills, payments, do some e-commerce, and this is where I expect to receive my activation details for SIM card. So let's go through onboarding flow, the first case. So like I said, a sign up portal allows me to sign up, to subscribe for a service. You can build it the way you want. For demo, I use a simplified version here. So I choose a plan, right? Then I give a name to my subscriber. I give some address and I give my email. Go next. Okay, they want me my card. I give some card to prepay for the first month or something like that. It's up to you to design your sales strategies. Here I just putting some fake values just to go, right? Just to start. Yeah, so it congratulates me and actually sets my expectations that my eSIM shall be delivered by email shortly. So let's give it some moment to create a subscriber record in PortaBilling system, to place an order, and to fulfill the order. I can see that some email was already delivered here. It says, welcome, your new SIM is ready. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I got my activation code. Please do not scan it until I finish this demo, because I will have to do this again. So, and basically the onboarding flow is finished, and now it's time to show you how I'm going to install it into my phone. So for that, I'm going to access my phone. This is my personal phone. And let's go to settings, SIM cards. It says eSIM is not configured. So I'm gonna just click here, take me there. All right, to add another SIM, download a new SIM, download new SIM. I choose download new SIM. Okay, it's gonna open my camera. Laggy, but yeah, it says so. I put that on QR code, and just in a minute it scans that, and now I'm just confirm my download. eSIM downloaded. Go to settings. So it says eSIM PortaOne 3, and now I can actually already enable and use this SIM card. Yeah, so that was the second piece I prepared, and I will just give you idea how it all looks like in the systems. So here in SIM cards, if we reload, we will see that one of the SIM cards became in use, and we can actually go and see which account was created to use that card. Remember, we choose Platinum SIM card, and the customer was supposed to be Sergii Kirik, a webinar, just like that. And if I go to this customer, I can see my email and some address in Nigeria. This my Sana portal is configured to create subscribers in Nigeria. Okay, now if we go to Nordic eSIM platform and refresh profiles, we will see that one of the profile became installed, this one, right? So if I click it, I can also browse the same QR code, the same activation code as in my email, and more details are available, as well as audit trail. So as we can see, we can see the actions, like preparation of the profiles for download, in actual installation. We can also see previous usage of this profile. So that's all audited. Yeah, so from my side, Klaus, that's it. I think we can go for next section.
Thank you so much, Sergei. And also, so you should be able to see my slides now again. I'm going to load up the Q&A slide, but also just before I start answering some questions and pass them to my colleagues and partner, I want to make sure I maybe clarify a few aspects. I'm fully aware that not all of you are familiar with PortaBilling, what we provide as PortaOne, what Nordic eSIM provides, and so on. So I just want to take this opportunity to quickly clarify, because I saw a few questions already in Q&A. So PortaOne is a software company. We provide PortaBilling, a billing platform. We do not have any contracts with mobile operators around the world ourselves, meaning we're not an MVNE, we're not an MVNA. You do need your own contracts with operators around the world in order to start offering mobile services of any kind, physical or eSIM. So we do help you obviously with the process. We can help you with the platform, the billing platform, and Nordic eSIM can help you with the eSIM platform to deploy an eSIM-based mobile service to your subscribers. But we do not have the contracts with the operators. That is something that you will need to bring. The second piece that I wanted to clarify here is PortaOne. We offer PortaBilling as a billing platform. Everything that you've seen here is still quite modular, meaning there is what Sergei referred to is PortaOne Workflows, which is an iPaaS platform that we've seen you or shown you a few times in the past on a few webinars before. So if you're interested in that, take a look at our YouTube channel. You do not have to use PortaOne Workflows, which is the Boomi platform that we use as an iPaaS. You're welcome to use any other integration platform. We found it incredibly useful and helpful to use a low-code platform like this. And it makes launching and integrating various systems quite easy without extensive coding required. It's more of a configuration job than a development job from that perspective. PortaOne Workflows is an optional service that we offer. So it is something that's not included, but it is an optional chargeable service that we're offering. And of course, I encourage you to reach out to Rune for their services, for eSIM capabilities. Yes, there are others out there, but I truly believe it always works really well if you use a proven sort of journey with partners that have already ensured that their solution works end to end. So I think it would make sense for many of you that are interested in eSIM to reach out to Rune and learn more about what they can do for you. So let's jump into the questions here. So there's one question here. If PortaOne charges additional fees for MVNO, or is it already included? Our platform is an unlimited license, meaning all of the modules, all of the capabilities that PortaBilling brings is included. We do not charge extra for MVNO piece of the puzzle, but it's all in the same platform. So no, there's no extra piece that you need to pay for. If you're interested in the workflows, that is extra, but not all of you may need to use it. Here's a question. It says Porta eSIM downloaded. So in this case, Porta eSIM is the MVNO MNO. Rune, maybe you can answer that question.
Yeah, it's in this case, we created Porta as an MVNO MNO in the system. So the data here is dummy data to just prove the whole workflow and the download, etc.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. And maybe connected to that, Rune, maybe a question from me to you to answer to all of our participants. You work with a variety of global MNOs. Is there any limitation? What do folks have to be aware in a global context? Does it work anywhere?
Yes, and I mean eSIM works everywhere, and eSIM is again like a SIM card, right? So it roams in the same way and so on. What one needs to be aware of is that there are differences between the devices. How is the, let's say, integration of eSIM in the devices? It's not big differences, but most devices will require Wi-Fi in order to download the profile. When testing with a Microsoft Surface, if you try to download the profile if you try to delete the profile you have downloaded while not having Wi-Fi, okay, the device will not allow you to do that, whereas iPhone will allow you to do that and will notify the platform when it gets Wi-Fi connection. So there are slight differences on device level, And that's something one needs to be aware of when you launch, because your subscribers might, come back and ask questions in that aspect.
There's one question here, Rune, that maybe you can also take. What about one-click eSIM install instead of QR codes? Is this also possible?
So there are, let's say, for eSIM, there are more ways of installing eSIM than scanning the QR code. One can put in manually the activation code. That's a bit complicated because you saw how that was built of strange characters. But obviously it can be copied into the field where you can put it in manually. Mm-hmm. You can also have an application, and I think there's also a question about that. If you have your own application, can that activation code be sort of inserted into that application and thereby work as a onboarding via a click? And then there is the Apple entitlement server. We do not offer the entitlement server, but we work with partners that does. The entitlement server is actually much more than the eSIM part. The eSIM part is a very small part of the entitlement server, and there is some approvals and certifications to be done with Apple. It's actually the MNO or MVNO that needs to be approved, not the eSIM platform vendor. So we certainly are happy to help with that and to help connect you to partners that might be able to do this. But to launch eSIM, it's not needed initially to have the entitlement server. But yes, if you want to include Apple Watch, for example, then entitlement server is a requirement.
Thank you. That's actually something I didn't know either. So thanks for definitely learned something there. There are a few questions here about how it works in various countries, how one can use eSIM to make money, and so on. I think this is obviously a fairly generic question, important regardless. So maybe what I would like to add to that is eSIM itself as a technology is not that different from physical SIMs. What it allows you to do is to fully digitalize your offering to the mobile subscriber, meaning you could design a fully digital customer journey and therefore steal away some customers, some subscribers from MVNOs as USD MVNO. And then I think that's one of once you've identified a niche where you believe is underserved, maybe with travelers or students or whoever you're trying, or in an IoT sense, maybe enterprises, vehicle tracking, and so on. Once you've identified your niche, I think eSIM can make it easier to create value to your subscribers, and this value would then translate into you making and turning a profit in your end. But otherwise, of course, it's quite tricky to answer that sort of question in the global context. The mobile markets are quite different around the world. Let me see. So we've answered the question about one-click eSIM. There's a question here: does PortaOne offer white label option? If so, how many layers? Yes, we do. PortaOne or Porta billing platform is fully white labeled. You can have as many layers or as many resellers and sub-resellers as you wish. It's very flexible in that regard. If you're interested in learning more, please reach out to us at PortaOne. There is here a question: if a phone is lost, can we block the eSIM from the PortaOne platform, or do we need to contact the operator? Sergei, maybe that's something you can answer, I believe.
Yeah, thank you very much. In production deployments, we typically integrate more flows than I showed you today. Particularly, the flow that you're asking is blocking the SIM in case it's stolen or there is some misuse or whatever. So this kind of flow is also implemented to block a line in Porta billing system. PortaOne workflows would go and block that line, SIM card or subscriber profile, depending on the HLR. Let's say in HLR, it will block it in HLR. right? Or it could be a MVNA platform, because sometimes MVNOs sign up or go integrate through MVNA platform with aggregator in this case. So yeah, it's just a matter of an integration, and in this way it will be completely automated, so you don't have to go and talk to MNO and ask them to do the job.
Thanks, Sergei. There's one, I think, interesting question, Rune, that you can maybe explain a little bit, whether Nordic eSIM is sold as white label. I don't think the Nordic eSIM platform would typically be exposed to the subscriber. Does white label somehow apply to you at all? No, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you actually almost answered the question, because the platform as such is not seen by the subscriber. Mm-hmm. And if you noticed, in the activation code was the web address of the platform, and there we have chosen the name smdpplus.net, which is not indicating whether it's Nordic eSIM platform, so it's a neutral name. So from that perspective, there is not let's say a need for a white label solution, because the customers will not see the Nordic eSIM platform. That is an internal tool for you as an MNO.
Thank you. One question here: if Porta billing is a real-time system, or whether we use CDRs. Porta billing is indeed real-time system. Everything that happens in the platform is done in real time. We support radius and diameter as the main real-time protocols. But of course, we also do support CDRs, so you can always use our CDR mediator to import CDRs for postpaid type of service. There's another question here, which I think is interesting to get a bit of a global context: how to onboard if the customer does not have a computer, especially in Africa, for example. I think we've sort of shown that already. A computer is not necessary to sign up for the mobile service. So any mobile service that a subscriber might see in Africa, they can sign up using their mobile phone. That mobile phone could have a Wi-Fi connection, or needs to have a Wi-Fi connection to download the eSIM profile. But other than that, no computer is necessary. Rune, do you have anything to add?
There are some different options. You saw in the email that Sergei had, that there was the activation code, so one could copy that into the field where you insert it manually on the phone and therefore stay on the phone. That's one option. We see also very often point of sales that are just printing the QR code on a small receipt or something like that for one to scan. So it becomes a little bit physical though, but that's a way that how it's resolved in many places, just printing out the QR code and making it available for the subscriber, right at hand.
One interesting question that I noticed here that I feel like it's important to cover: as an IoT provider, we want to use eSIM, but the MNO told us it's the same. So basically, they were forcing us to use physical SIM cards. Although the question asker were inclined to use eSIM. Maybe from your experience, are MNOs reluctant to offer eSIMs because it forces them to change, or what's the reason for this sort of behavior? I mean, my recommendation would be, if possible, to use a different MNO that supports eSIM.
I mean, MNOs are not super fond of eSIM. And to some extent, that's understandable. I mean, it poses an easier way to change between the MNOs, especially if you look in the whole M2M section. If they can get you to put in a SIM card to a device that is not reachable afterwards, but then they have a customer electrical meter sits there for 10-15 years, you don't go there to change the SIM. So MNOs are generally reluctant to implement those solutions, I think there are more and more MNOs that are opening up, and I think you should go and use some of those at least to apply pressure to the others. I think it will come, but it will come slowly. There's also the new SDP32 eSIM IoT specification coming up, and that is very interesting to see what that will do to the market. But in simple terms, it basically utilizes the consumer eSIM platform, and you then connect to the platform using your device. Now, we did not touch upon the M2M platform today, but basically you connect to the platform like you do with your device, your consumer device, and then you download the profile, and that does make it all a little bit more interoperable. But yes, I fully understand the question, and we've seen the same scenario happening out there a number of times.
Is this, Rune, one of the main challenges that you've identified in adopting? I was going to ask you to share with the audience too, what is sort of the main hurdle that you encounter?
That has mainly been a hurdle in the M2M eSIM platform. The M2M eSIM platform is structured a little bit different, and there it does require a little bit more involvement from the MNO, or at least acceptance from them, and that is one of the bigger challenges. For consumer eSIM, we see less reluctance, because there it's a bit more an interesting flow, and I mean, subscribers might be. It's actually something that the GSMA is going to investigate over the next couple of months. Does eSIM actually increase churn or not? I mean, I think exchanging the SIM card is not necessarily that big of a hurdle, but it's going to be exciting to see what they find out, whether this will actually increase churn, or if it will stay the same. Of course, if it increases churn, then MNOs will maybe be a little bit more reluctant again.
Thanks so much. There's a couple more questions I think that we have time for. There's a question here. I may have more than one SIM. How do I move from one to the other SIM? I think this is very dependent on the Android or Apple device, or whichever device you're using. I can only share maybe from my experience with my iPhone 11, so not one of the latest devices, but actually already quite a few years old, and it's quite easy to download eSIM profiles, delete them. You can assign various contacts or data connections to use whichever eSIM you have installed, and you can certainly have multiple eSIM profiles installed at the same time, switch between them. There was one more question that I saw here. Android and iOS operating system allowing directly to install, edit, or delete eSIMs from the app. Not sure which app this is referring to. I mean, you can do it directly on your phone. Rune, do you know if you have your own app, do you get usually access to delete, remove eSIM profiles? I'm sure
there are apps today developed that where you have maybe an operator have an app already, and they integrate then the opportunity to download eSIM via the app, and the application will then interact with the API of the device. In some cases, it anyway I believe with iPhone it actually takes you into the iPhone eSIM download menu anyway. I'm sure with Android there's probably better opportunities to stay in the app, but there is a set of let's say features that you can implement in your app to have an in-app eSIM functionality.
Thank you. Maybe one of the final questions here, how can an MVNO measure the ARPU in the eSIM environment? I mean, in terms of ARPU, it's not any different. A subscriber is a subscriber, whether they have physical SIM or an eSIM. So PortaBilling can help you with that to get a sense of what your ARPU is. But other than that, it wouldn't be any different. So let's see. So I would say we covered most of the questions that we have. I truly appreciate everyone taking such active part and having lots of questions. I think that shows that this webinar and this topic is very important to many of you, and that you're interested in it, and that you feel there might be opportunities here to offer a valuable service to subscribers and be profitable. So I truly appreciate these questions and actively participating. We will have all of the questions that we did not have a chance to answer. We will summarize and also have in our recording that we publish and make available on our website, and make available obviously to Nordic eSIM. So Rune, you can distribute it among your customers if you want to.
Yeah.
So we will have additional questions that we didn't get a chance to answer. We'll answer them there. We will have the recording available. And other than that, I truly appreciate everyone participating. And thank you, Rune, so much for taking the time.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Sergei, thank you for taking your time to show us and then building the workflows. It's
My pleasure.
Truly amazing what you can do with the low-code platform and applying some glue. So thanks everyone for attending, and
Thank you.
enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.